Part about the veteran, thank you so much. When I came back from Vietnam, it wasn't that way, but things have improved so much for veterans. I'm John McCoy. We have 214 acres with my wife, South Warren County, right on Nashville Road. Bowling Green's coming at us one way and Franklin the other. I started farming, so I started producing alfalfa hay 60 years, it'll be 60 years ago in April when I first planted my first field. Um, Back then, Western University didn't do much work with alfalfa, but Pennsylvania did. They have a lot of dairies. So I started studying Pennsylvania varieties. And I had my varieties picked out and worked with that. When I anticipated moving to Kentucky, I started studying UK varieties. I had varieties that I was going to use. And I came here in April or spring of '89. I started going to seed dealers. And I said, you have this variety, this variety. And they said, no, we have Buffalo. I had never heard of Buffalo at the time. I went to another seed dealer, and it was the same thing. Third dealer told me, Buffalo does as well as anything around here. I thought, how do you know? That's all you plant. So I had to order my first seeds that year and get them shipped in. I had a field I wanted to plant 20 acres, 20 feet wide, 5 different varieties. And I planted that and I ran a little short on one of the varieties. I had to run and get some seed, so I had to plant Buffalo. I've never had an agricultural class. In 60 years, I've acquired a PhD in mistakes. Let's start at the beginning, soil testing. Know what's in your soil, know what's not in there. Priced lime recently, $12.60 a ton, my local quarry. And I sprayed fertilizer last week, and it ran from $505 to $750 a ton. Not as bad as last spring, but a big difference. If you're minimal on money you want to spend on your soil, I say go with the lime. You get better bang for your buck. I like to use certified seed. A lot of these universities have done tests, and I like to use the seed from them. How much seed? Use enough. I've been going with 20-some pounds in alfalfa, 30 in orchard grass, 50 in annual ryegrass, and a lot in the warm season grasses. If you go to Hawaii, they have about 1,000 islands, and they have these little 2-engine planes that fly passengers from island to island. I call them pedal jumpers. We was going to get on a plane one morning. The guy came around the clipboard. He says, how much you weigh? I said, what difference does it make? And he said, well, we know how much weight we're carrying, how much fuel to put in the plane. I said, well, fill it up. I don't want to die in a plane crash and some overweight person lied about their weight. We took off, and the pilot came on the intercom and said, well, one engine's having a problem. We're going to shut it down and fly on one engine. The guy beside me started getting real nervous. He said, how far do you think we can make it on one engine? I told him, I said, I think we'll make it all the way to the scene of the crash. I told him, I bet we'll beat the paramedics there by 30 minutes. So put enough seed in. I keep my alfalfa usually in about 7 years. I can keep it in seed. Then I go with orchard grass after that. So 7 years, I'm getting used to that seed, and the seed's getting higher every year. And then that next year, I'll have orchard grass alfalfa mixed. And then if I spray it in that 9th year, I'm still getting the benefit of that alfalfa. When the roots are decomposing, they're going to be putting nitrogen into my orchard grass. I make 36-inch bales, 14 by 18. That's 100 inches around plus a couple inches where it makes the knot and cuts off. And there's 2 strings on that bale. In that time, you'll spend more money on twine than you did for that seed that you planted in the ground. I no-till everything since 2005, with one exception. I bought a new farm in 2010 that in one field had tobacco in it, and I disc it and smooth it down. And that's the only exception it's been in 18 years. If you work up your ground, you're destroying it. There's a lot of living things in that soil, and you're killing them. that's a subject for another day. But I no-till everything. It helps with a lot of erosion problems, wind, rain, and cool season grasses, alfalfa, legumes. I plant no more than a half inch. Quarter inch is great. If you don't see some seed on top of the ground, the saying is that you're planting too deep, and that's the number one failure I've seen of seed stands is planting too deep. Keep the field clean, keep the competition out of there, weeds and whatever else may be in there. Warm season grasses, I can plant about an inch. I like to do warm season late spring. I like to do the cool season grasses or legumes late summer. Get a good rain late August. If not, go into middle September. And I have planted as late as October the 3rd and got a good stand. But in the springtime, it's kind of hard to plant no-till because those discs will work up so much ground, and your cover wheels won't cover up those just as good as that, as you can get into some drier soil. When you're going to plant with a no-till planter, go to the field that you want to plant in. All soils are different, fields are different. Don't go out and test it before you put seed in it. Don't try it out in your yard. Your wife won't like it, mine didn't. If you cut your hay, I want to cut my alfalfa very short. Those stems are not coming back. The crown's going to put up new stems. And so I want to get all that forage off there. I want to make money. And so I'll tell you, some of you young guys here, just a note, women love dead presidents. And your husbands already know that. And so with my grass, your growing point's in the first 2 inches from the soil. Stay at least 3 inches or higher. I cut my cool season grasses 4 inches higher, 4 inches high, and I'm going to be above that growing point, and I'm also going to get more photosynthesis from the sun. I don't like to ted alfalfa. I try not to at all. I will beat orchard grass up, sometimes 2 and 3 times. I've actually made orchard grass dry square bales in 24 hours if you get the right drying conditions and get it dry quick. I rake basically alfalfa at night. I can usually start about dark when the leaves have picked up enough moisture. 72% of the food value in alfalfa is in the leaves. The stems are just green straw. The wheat straw has 3.6% protein in it. So orchard grass, I'll rake in the evening before it gets due. The main thing about that is I want to preserve the looks of it. I'll use big windrows to keep the dew off of it, and because when the sun comes out the next morning, it's going to start bleaching. And we've seen this and heard this before. The number one thing of most of my customers, they're horse owners, and the first thing they're looking at is the collar. The second thing they're looking at in alfalfa is the size of the stems. They don't want big stems. Horses can eat boards fenced down. They can eat bark off a tree. For some reason, they can't eat large stems. They want those small stems. I turn my hay a good bit. I'll turn it and to help dry it and not have to ted alfalfa. Most of the time, I bale alfalfa at night. By night, I'm saying about an hour before sundown, I can get started and bale into dark. When the leaves have picked up enough moisture, we're back to those leaves again. With grass, I can bale anytime during the day, and I love that. In 2007, we were having a drought here in Kentucky. The earliest I could start baling that year was about 10:30 at night. My average was 1 to 1:30 in the morning, and I actually started one morning, I remember, at 4:30 in the morning. But it's really cool to be out there baling hay when that sun's coming over the horizon. I carry a probe for moisture in my baler, a tape measure, and also I carry a scale. I want to weigh those bales. I want to know what they weigh. I don't want to give any hay away. And I want those bales to be about the same length, and I want to probe them. After bale hay, when I pick it up, usually on wagons, I take it into a building, and I'll check it, probe it every day or two for a while. I don't want to send out any hay that I haven't tested for a while in case it's going to heat up. I don't want to burn somebody's barn down. But I won't sell the hay just immediately, but all my hay is sold before I ever cut it. I used to do the long haul thing. I don't know what happened to it, but I've sold hay New Orleans, Jasper, Texas, Natchez, Mississippi, Miami, Ocala, Alabama, Montgomery, Raleigh, North Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, Indiana, and whatever reason those are, I don't care. I don't really like that. All my hay is sold within 40 or 50 miles of my farm, mostly northeast Tennessee and some just local counties around me. One person tells the next one, that's how it is. You can't make enough good hay in this country. And then get your hay tested. This is a bargain for $10 with the UK lab that you can get your hay tested. It cost me $4.50, $5 to sand it. I'll borrow one of my wife's quart freezer bags. She's never asked to get it back. And I'll fill that up with a quart of sample. Dollar store has these nice yellow envelopes. You can put 1 or 2 samples in them for almost nothing. Take it down to the local post office and send it. Kim will test it, and she'll send you back the results on that. So we start out with a test with a soil test, and we end up with a test testing your hay. You'll be surprised what's in there because I can never tell for sure about that nutrition. Sometimes it comes back and I'm very disappointed. Sometimes I'm very surprised. And it will vary a lot. It is amazing how much difference there can be in hay that looks alike, but it's not alike.